The way the ridings have been redrawn, combined with the fact that Alberta is getting 3 new seats, well, that adds up to a new electoral playing field likely to favor the Conservatives.
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. We've mentioned before that one of the primary reasons we believe an election is coming in the spring is because of the upcoming electoral boundary changes. These are the boundaries that determine which riding voters belong to. We found it curious that CBC released an article on October 9th about the significant impact of the electoral riding change across Canada, and it was quickly buried on their website.
The article was written by Christian Pass-Lang, who seems to have a history of relatively unbiased or even conservative-friendly articles in the CBC. But before we get to the article, let's take a look at this story from Global News.
Democrat Daniel Blakey represents the Northwest Winnipeg riding of Elmwood-Transcona. His riding is mostly urban voters, but in the new map, it will grow to become more rural. Blakey doesn't think that makes sense.
I think it is a reasonable goal of the redistribution process to try and have urban ridings and rural ridings without the split where possible.
But in fact, the new rural part of his riding tends to vote Conservative, and that means the new riding boundaries will make it harder for a new Democrat like Blakey to win. There are lots of ridings like that across the country, right on the boundaries of cities. Generally speaking, those that become more rural become more Conservative, and those that become more urban tend to lean Liberal or NDP.
I would like to thank the good people from the city of Victoria.
Liberal Jaime Baptiste, he's not worried about losing Liberal voters. He's upset the Commission split up Indigenous communities in his Nova Scotia riding.
The only place that was suggested that they remove from that riding was the largest Mi'kmaq community of 5,000 voters, the community that is my home.
The commissions are supposed to draw boundaries to keep together what are called communities of interest.
Basically groups, identities that are relevant to people. It could be urban versus rural. It could be linguistic minorities. Could be racialized minorities. And so the commissions are supposed to take those factors into account in trying to keep communities together.
MP Ed Fast says that principle has been ignored in his riding of Abbotsford, British Columbia.
I'm not sure that the current proposal fully reflects the communities of interest that the Commission is supposed to take into account.
The city and riding of Abbotsford will be split into 2 new ridings, Abbotsford South Langley and the huge riding of Mission Matsqui Abbotsford. Now, the commissions that are redrawing these maps, they are not allowed to consider how people vote, but I'll tell you, the politicians do. And they say the way the ridings have been redrawn, combined with the fact that Alberta is getting 3 new seats, well, that adds up to a new electoral playing field likely to favor the Conservatives.
So this is exactly what we've been talking about for the last little while when we say that we believe the NDP are going to call an election before this takes place in May, this coming May 2024, because they're going to lose seats. And it's not that the voters are going anywhere, it's just that the way that they're drawing the boundaries on the map, it's going to affect them, and it's going to affect the NDP and the Liberals severely.
Yeah, so you saw in the first example they used in that news story, there's an NDP guy who's probably very concerned that he's not going to win his seat in the next election because they're adding a whole bunch of Conservative voters to his riding. Now, as they said, the people that are responsible for the riding distribution are not looking at this and saying, hey, let's add a whole bunch of Conservatives to this NDP riding. They're just looking at it by population and the groups accordingly. So you even saw one of the Conservatives out in BC, he wasn't too happy with how they're splitting this up. So you can see it's a relatively unbiased process and objective process.
And Elections Canada is its own independent body. They do not report to the governing party. They don't report to the opposition. They don't report to the PMO. They're their own entity.
Yeah, so they're completely independent, and the Prime Minister can't ask them or really force them to do anything. So you can see there's some concern out there because of the new additions coming in.
Now let's get to this article. A shifting electoral map could boost Conservatives in the next election. The Conservatives may be set to benefit from a shifting electoral landscape in Canada, but that potential boost has nothing to do with the polls or the latest twists and turns in Ottawa. Across the country, independent commissions have finalized the process of drawing new federal ridings, which will take effect in the next election, as long as it occurs after April of next year. That process involves shifting riding boundaries to take into account changes in population and factors like economic and cultural ties between communities within ridings. Some changes move a riding boundary by a few blocks. Some move them by a few hundred kilometers. All told, the changes may work to the Conservatives' advantage, says Eric Grenier, a podcaster and polling expert who runs theWrit.ca. Overall, I think the map does benefit the Conservatives more than any other party, Grenier told CBC News.
Grenier said that while the boundary changes can be important, perhaps the biggest boost to Conservatives' fortunes could come from the addition of new seats to the House of Commons. The federal seat count is set to expand from 338 to 343. 3 extra ridings in Alberta. All 3 of those are probably new seats for the Conservatives. The extra seat in the BC Interior is in an area where the Conservatives are likely to win, he said. So they are the ones that benefit from the new seats that are being added. One seat being added in Brampton, Ontario area might swing the Liberals' way, Grenier said.
Grenier said it's important to keep in mind that broader trends in party support and the state of the campaign play much more significant roles in an election's outcome than the changes to the riding map. A changing to a riding boundary that yields a few hundred more votes for the Liberals wouldn't matter much if they lose thousands more votes in broader support, he said. Quote, "No one wins an election or forms the government just because of the change of map," end quote, Grenier said. Quote, "But if we end up in the next election and it really is tight and it comes down to a few seats, then yeah, the map will be really important," end quote.
Fred Delory, the Conservative strategist who ran former leader Erin O'Toole's 2021 campaign, is more enthusiastic about what the map means for Conservative support. Quote, "I don't even know if I could have designed a better map for the Conservatives," end quote, he told CBC News. It's fantastic.
So for those interested, this is a Canada-wide change, and we were able to find a helpful resource for you to check out how your riding might change in the next election. Here's a view across Canada with the current ridings. And here's a view of Canada with the new proposed riding changes.
So as you can see, there are lots of changes, and the Conservatives are very excited about what this means for them in the next election.
And the nice thing about this map is that you can scroll in right to pretty much your own house and see if your riding has changed.
You can actually enter your address, and it will take you right to that riding and tell you what riding you're in. So there's going to be a bunch of people that were in one party's riding and are now going to be in another party's riding, or you may be in a brand new riding, as indicated in the article. Now, going back to what we've been saying since March, this has the NDP and the Liberals spooked because they don't want to have the Conservatives to have any extra advantage when it comes to the next federal election.
Well, and they've already got a huge advantage, as we see in the polls all the time. Right now, according to the most recent Nanos poll, the Conservatives are up by 12 points. That is huge in politics.
Right. And they may be actually gifted 4 extra seats, which makes it that much harder to form a majority, to escape a minority government, whatever that outcome might be. 4 extra seats is a massive amount. To put that in perspective, that's almost 20% of the current NDP seat count.
That's double the current Green count.
That's double the current Green count. In any case, it's interesting that this article came out last week, which was a week after all of the business about the pharmacare came up, and the article that came out about the NDP putting forth a resolution to withdraw from the supply and confidence agreement on the condition of pharmacare not going through as a bill. So everything is starting to line up. And the last thing to remember is that the public inquiry judge has to submit a preliminary report by February of next year. Could that report include her initial thoughts on whether an election is safe to have at this point? If it does, everything's lining up for a spring election, everyone. This isn't 100%, but we're just reading the tea leaves, and it's almost tea time.